I use a load of different tools to apply masking fluid to paper, depending on what effects that I want to achieve. So we're going to take a look at a myriad of ways we can apply masking fluid on. Most of you may have seen or tried applying masking fluid with a brush and ruined many. I know I have loads of ruined brushes. So I'm going to show you the best way that I found to make your brushes last a little longer. In the second half of this video, I'm going to try alternatives to the brush. Yes, there are many different applicators which you probably haven't considered, from Q-tips to rolled up paper. It's going to be so fun looking at all these choices, so please keep an open mind. You might have heard that masking fluid is where brushes go to die. As you can see from these examples, they are glued on, gunky, irregular, and they have no painting life left in them. I would always recommend using old brushes that are not best for watercolors or whatever gouache. You are going to ruin them eventually, so you can either use old brushes or you can buy a set of cheap plastic brushes like this. I probably got these for $2. And they will fall apart anyway, so I don't mind them getting completely busted like these here. To preserve the bristles on even cheap brushes like this, it is advisable to wet them and then coat it in some liquid soap or washing up detergent, and this will protect the bristles to some extent, so let's give it a go. What I like to do is to dip it in water and then dab off a bit of the excess, and I've got the washing up liquid in here, and then I dab it into that and make sure that the bristles are nicely coated. Now I'm going to dip it into my masking fluid, play around with it a little bit on paper, pretend I'm creating something marvellous, and then it's probably best to wash it off immediately after you've finished doing that. And you can see it has preserved it very nicely, so jolly good. It's got a bit more life in it left. I want to show you this one on the right. I do remember dipping it in washing up liquid, but I let it dry on too much, and as you can see, no amount of washing up liquid is going to get that off, and I just wasn't able to retrieve it. So that's another major point. Try to wash it off as soon as you've finished, otherwise you're going to end up with another crappy brush. I want to show you this Frisk masking fluid brush. It came in a set of 3, but this is the only one I've got left, and I took it as face value. I simply dipped it into masking fluid without doing any of the liquid detergent. I'm afraid it didn't really work. As you can see, it's not something I would recommend. I would literally just go down the cheapo plastic brushes. Now it's time to think beyond the brush. Let's take a look at some of these. Now these wonderful items are called silicone shapers, and I actually saw another artist apply masking fluid with this, so I wanted to give it a go. They're also used by model makers and sculptors, so if you Google silicone carving or model making tool, you'll probably see something like this. I thought they were relatively cheap. Apparently all you need to do to clean them is to let them dry, and the masking fluid will magically peel off. If you've seen my other classes, you'll know I love the dip pen, and this is actually how I started using it in college, and it might not be something that you have considered. So let's dip it into the masking fluid. It has to go past that reservoir there, and let's just draw it on there. And you can see you can create quite fine lines depending on the nib that you're using. I've got this version here where I let the masking fluid dry on, and one of the concerns that people tell me is how do we get it off? And all I do is peel it off. It's actually really satisfying. If I take it off like that, it's absolutely fine. And you can use it with ink afterwards. You don't have to reserve it just for masking fluid. Alternatively, if there's still wet masking fluid on your dip pen, you just wipe it off on a kitchen roll and it will come off pretty easily. Now this nifty contraption is called a ruling pen. It's quite an old-fashioned tool. I received two as gifts from top teacher Jen Dixon, and essentially the paint, ink or other wet medium is inserted into this space between two metal arms of the ruling pen, which are tapered to a point here. There we go. You can see the masking fluid within those two metal arms. Another thing worth having in the masking fluid toolbox are old toothbrushes. I used to use these all the time at college, as you saw. We're just going to dip it in there and I will flick it across the paper. We are going to test these out properly later. I tried to wash off the masking fluid just now in my jar, and you can see that there's a bit of a residue, so if you want you could probably dip it into washing up liquid to try and preserve it that little bit longer, but I have plenty of old toothbrushes at home. Other items I use quite often are common Q-tips, the kind you can pick up at the supermarket. You can see this one is where I've let it dry on and I just wanted to see what effects it made. I think the best use of this is to make little round dots. Again, when we do the tests, you'll be able to see this a lot better. Also, you might like to consider toothpicks. Can't wait to try these out a little bit more. Also, you might like to consider paper clips. Obviously this one I have unravelled a little bit and it pretty much works like this. Finally, something you may have not considered is paper. It's just an old shopping list, and if I just make it into a point like this, make it really tight, this can actually become an applicator. And you can get all different effects depending on how thickly you have made that tip using a piece of paper.